Welcome back to another school year. I'm very excited to call this the first school committee meeting of the year to order with a moment of silence and a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Superintendent, will you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Ms. Palmer. Mr. Futrell.
Here and ready.
President Ballantyne.
Here.
Mayor Curtatone. Mr. Green.
Here.
Ms. O'Sullivan.
Here.
Ms. Patone.
Present.
Dr. Ackman.
Here.
Ms. Norman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. At the start of every meeting, I need to read this. In accordance with the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law, please note that video and audio of this meeting is being recorded and may be shown live on both local access cable television and on the City of Somerville website, and will be available for future review. Okay. Well, I'm so excited for our second agenda item, which is awards and citations in recognition of our colleague Dan Futrell, who will be sadly departing, but going on to become the CEO of the Pat Tillman Foundation. So I'm going to ask Dan and Laura Patone to join me over there. And Ms. Will you take this stand?
Ms. Norman?
Thank you. Okay, so Dan Futrell. Whereas Dan Futrell has been a member of the Somerville School Committee since 2014, and whereas Mr. Futrell's service has included serving as chair of Finance and Facilities Subcommittee for 3 years and chair of Rules Subcommittee for 1, and whereas during 5+ years of service to the school committee, Mr. Futrell has helped the district with prioritizing the education and nurturing of the whole child and developing alternative assessments through the Massachusetts Consortium for Innovative Education Assessments. And whereas Mr. Futrell's service has included the hiring of our superintendent and developing a human capital plan to increase equity and diversity across all district staff. And whereas, during his tenure on the school committee, Mr. Futrell has served as a champion for the social and emotional health of all our students, and from the very young through graduation, and therefore be it resolved that the Somerville School Committee publicly acknowledges the efforts of Dan Futrell and wishes him continued success in his role of Chief Executive Officer of the Pat Tillman Foundation, and be it further resolved that this well-earned resolution be included in the minutes of tonight's meeting and that a framed copy be presented to Mr. Futrell. Oh, we've got a lot of hardware. This is particularly sweet. Dan, Laura, and I all were the class of 2014 and came in, and the district was in a very different place. MCAS scores were the #1 goal. I think some of our first votes were to refocus the district to make the whole child the goal. It was a steep learning curve, and you have been an exceptional colleague, generous with your expertise, especially with numbers and finance, and an empathetic advocate for our students. Your experiences growing up, your leadership as an Army Ranger, the lives that you have touched, the situations you have put yourself in, and the expectations of yourself and your colleagues has been very high, and it has made me a much better school committee member and has benefited the whole district. So I am grateful that I've had these 5+ years with you. Laura, did you want to say something?
Dan, it's been a real privilege to work with you. I think that your leadership brings both intensity and lightness which is a challenging balance. You bring up things that are challenging, but at the same time, you have a great sense of humor and you really care about relationships, and I really value that. And Carrie did an excellent job listing all of your accomplishments, but I really want to say from the bottom of my heart, I'm really going to miss you. I think you're a real asset on the school committee, and the next person has some big shoes to fill. So thank you so much for everything, and please stay in touch. So. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Ackman, would you like to say some words?
Well, I would. Thank you for intuiting that. A board is a very unique balance of individuals, and while many constituents believe that you need to have kids in the schools or have worked in education to be on school committee, one of the things that is so wonderful about Dan is the passion you bring without those stereotypical things that we, the rest of us, have. And I believe that it has given you a presence and a perspective that we're going to miss. And so I have learned a lot from you, and I really appreciate all that I have learned, and I hope to continue to learn from you. And the Pat Tillman Foundation is very lucky, and I'm excited to see the work that you do there. Thanks.
Thank you for those thoughtful words. Superintendent Skipper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would be remiss, since you hired me, to not have a few words. But in all seriousness, I have appreciated since the beginning your connection around advocacy for students, particularly understanding that a student is whole, and the social emotional is so important, and in many positive ways you have pushed me and our cabinet to make sure that our schools have the supports that our students need. We've connected around dropout and graduation rate and the things that in your past life in Europe and other places have been so important to you. And so I know that now in this new job, you will bring all your passion in a new way to help a different kind of person in terms of our soldiers, but and our veterans. But the kids of Somerville are better for you having served on school committee, and I am a better superintendent for you having served on school committee. So thank you.
Madam President Ballantyne.
Thank you. So I want to wish you the best of luck. I will say, as sitting on the city council, we have a really strong chair of finance, and having the opportunity to sit on the school committee for these last almost 2 years. You've been a really strong chair of finance, and I have to really admire that and feel lucky that the city of Somerville has served in that capacity. You've just been so professional, and I wish you the best of luck in your new role.
Thank you. Mr. Futrell, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thanks everybody. You guys are really nice. I really appreciate the opportunity to serve, and it's for me. I served in this role longer than I did in the Army, which is weird. And like the military stuff, becomes part of your identity, but in a way that's maybe slightly different from school committee. But I really appreciate this opportunity to serve with everybody. And it's not about me. It's about teachers out here who are doing the hard work. And I feel grateful to have been asked to be able to support in this way. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, and we wish you very well in Chicago, and come back and visit us. We do not have any public comments, so we are going to move on to item number 4, the report of the superintendent. Superintendent Skipper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'd like to start with something that we left off at the end of last year, which was beginning our introductions of new administrative staff. I am extremely excited about the staff that is joining us this year. They bring collectively such an amazing amount of experience, student-centeredness, passion for the work, and I could not be more thrilled to have them join us in their various capacities. There are a few directors who are here who will actually do their introduction, and then I will introduce some other folks. So I'd like to start with Christine Trevisoni to come up and introduce the new Assistant Director of Special Education.
Congratulations, Dan. I have the pleasure of introducing Marilyn Verontas. Marilyn,
Just tip that up, Christine.
am I too tall for this, Andre? Okay. Sorry, Carrie. Marilyn comes to us, she was the director for Sandwich Public Schools, so you really get 2 for 1 on that. And she's been a great colleague. I think the greatest thing I've heard comment is that she has a quiet confidence, much like myself, quiet. So it's a great pairing. So we're excited that she's here.
That's great. And just a reminder for school committee, but when we finish the introductions, we'll take a short break just so that everybody can introduce themselves to the new administrators. The next is our new Assistant Director of Student Services. So I would ask Liz Doncaster to come up to the podium.
Good evening. Congratulations, Dan, and thank you. I have the pleasure of introducing Gilbert White. He hails from Boston Public Schools, where he recently was a middle school counselor, and before that, in the Boston Public Schools, he was a high school counselor and disciplinarian, so that is a nice fit for my department, and I welcome him, and I look forward to working with him.
Our next new leader is our new principal at the East, Obed Morales, who is a veteran leader. He has held a myriad of leadership positions, both out of state, so North Carolina and Florida, and he is seasoned as an assistant principal, spending a lot of time in the middle school and the high school years. He's hit the ground running at the East. I was over there today, and teachers are thrilled. I think the community is thrilled, so we welcome Obed. As you know, for the last 2 years, we've had a superintendent fellow, and we've been pretty blessed, Dr. Curley and then Dr. Boston Davis, both of whom now have positions within Somerville Public Schools. And this year, we have another fellow who is coming to us, Rebecca Granger, who I can't say enough positive things about. She just has a way of being able to see the work, particularly the equity and action work that we're about to begin, and see it at both a district level and at an actual city level in terms of how to tie all the supports together in a framework. So she's going to be working both in the schools and across the city. It's the first time I've had a superintendent fellow from Harvard that I had almost nothing to critique in her presentation for her opening project. So I look forward to Rebecca joining us. Rebecca. This next person needs no introduction, as you all know her, Sheila Freitas-Harris. So she has been in our district and a part of us for many years as an attendance officer, as a coach, and most recently she assumed the interim position for the supervisor of health and phys ed. And so, in phys ed and health. And so she is going to be joining us as the director and supervisor of health and phys ed this year. So Sheila. The next 3 are our deans of students. And as you know, the deans of students were positions that we created specifically in the schools to help bridge the work of the redirect and the principal and assistant principal with families and with students. And it's a position that really requires a nuancing of understanding of how to be able to work across students as well as across staff. And we're pretty blessed to have 3 very special people who are, 1 who is returning in that role and 2 who are joining us anew. The first is, again, someone that needs no introduction, as he's been at the West Somerville now for several years. Les Larte will be the new Dean of Students. Karen Grenier Marnin, who is coming from, as she just told me, the North Shore, where she has done an incredible amount of guidance work. And that's one of the things that we look for in these positions, is that experience really working across students. So we welcome Karen, who will be the new Dean of Students at AFA. And this next individual comes from Boston College High School, and I think he was with us a day, had maybe signed his paperwork, and he was already sending me opportunities for our students to get engaged in advanced science programming. He comes to us as having done a myriad of activities at BC High, but most prominently as a pretty impactful science teacher, Eddie Rodriguez.
On behalf of the school committee, I want to welcome all of you to Somerville. Whether you're new to Somerville or you're coming to us in a new role, I am thrilled to see both new faces, but also people making their careers here in the district and moving into different capacities. People who I know love this district and love our kids. And if you're new, you will love our kids too. And I want to, that's really the most important thing, right? All of the adults in contact with our kids is the most important thing that any of us do, and you are all right on the front lines. So thank you very much. We're going to take a 5-minute recess so we can all shake your hand. Some of us are huggers, so just be prepared. All right, we'll be back in 5. All right, we are going to resume our meeting. Should we give it a good whack? Right, Superintendent, would you like to resume with your report of the school year calendar?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask you, Madam Chair, if we can, after I quickly do the calendar update, if we can take out of order the building update.
Absolutely.
We have two of our administrators who need to be in quite early tomorrow morning.
We would be very happy to rearrange the agenda.
That's excellent. Thank you. So just in terms of the school calendar, we put into your packet just a little explanation about, and at your suggestion, a little clarification on our website about why we actually start before Labor Day and we actually start in August. And really the history here, it predates me, but it's a pretty good idea because it enables us to be able to get the teachers and the students in, let students meet their classmates, let teachers meet their students, so that we can truly hit the ground running post-Labor Day. This has become very important given that the deeper we go into June, the harder it is to really have continuous instruction. It's hot, people get into vacations. So by starting just a little bit earlier, it gives us a little wiggle room with the weather when we do in an inclement season have to call snow days. Although, as I will say, last year, one snow day, not jinxing myself, but really the goal between the snow gates and just the momentum of trying to keep the continuous instruction, it enables us to be able to go through the season and just has continuity for students and for staff. So that's sort of the history of why the decision was made contractually. And I think, getting out June 13th this past year really enabled us to have a break both for the educators and for the students before our summer programming began to kick off after July 5th. So that's a little bit of the context that you asked for.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Ms. Patone, did you want to ask a question?
Very brief. I just wanted to thank you. Sometimes we request things and it's hard to keep track of it, but you guys putting on this on the website is really helpful because this is the time of year that people start asking about it. And there's definitely a vocal contingent that feels really unhappy that their combination vacation schedule as well as their life schedule, because coming in the middle of the week can be hard for them. So I just wanted to thank you for putting this on the website.
And we appreciate their flexibility.
It is definitely, you hear from both, right? There's also families who don't have, there are no camps running this week, there is no resources, and to have their children, even for a day and a half, in a structured environment with adults, getting 2 meals a day in some cases, getting meals backpacked home. There are, in any district as complex and wonderfully diverse as ours, there will be a huge variety of opinions. So thank you for doing that. So we are going to skip down to new business to item A, the high school, Somerville High School building projects update.
And before I actually, Principal Lagambina and Associate Principal DeSimone, I can't say enough truly for their work as leaders, also for the staff in the CTE program, for all that they've done, and the students, for building out the Edgerly building the way that they have with such care, so that this year we can have a sound learning environment there. The flexibility of the Somerville High staff in general up at the building, the tensions of parking and not being in the building that you're accustomed to. So it's just required a lot of flexibility on their part, and I've been amazed at how they've embraced it and done it as they always do with class. So with that, I would just invite Associate Principal DeSimone and Principal Lagambina to the podium to just give a few quick updates.
And thank you, thank you, Leo. And before we begin, on behalf of the staff, we want to thank you, Dan, for all your support. We couldn't ask for a better school committee. The school, the district is well supported by the school committee, and we just want to thank you. And so thank you, Leo, for lowering the mic. I want to, like Mary said, I want to thank Leo and his staff for the tremendous amount of work, not only that they did this year, turning the Edgeley into a school, but that what they've done over the past 3 years, building classrooms in the high school, in the field, in the auditorium, creating office space, so all the work. So I just want to thank Leo, his staff, and the students that have worked tirelessly over this summer and the last 2 years. And now I'll turn it over to Leo.
Thank you, Sib. And like Mr. Lagamina said, I would like to thank the staff and the students too. We had 12 to sometimes 20 students working over the summer, and it was very hot down there. And the last 2 years, it's a lot of dedication for them. But I would like to thank them and the staff because it's a big commitment. I guess I want to talk a little bit about where we're at now, and I will say that I was debriefed this morning and again this afternoon, so I'll go a little forward learning that we got some good news today that the Phase 2 steel construction's actually finished. They pulled the cranes off site today, so you won't see them back again until Phase 2A, which will be the east part of the old atrium building, which if you look now, you see just the gym standing. So they're finishing on the lower level, they're taking out the bottom piece of the old welding shop, and after that is just the structure itself, and then the foundation will go around that. So just a little history of last year. You know, this time last year, they were abating close to 100,000 tons of soil, and not all of it was beach sand, as we know. They also dug down 54 feet. So I can kind of go ahead a little bit. This site logistics plan was just finalized in mid-August. This was sent out to all of the staff, students, parents, and guardians in the district. And it also aligns up with the muster plan, which is for the fire routes, which go around the 1895 building and the modular classrooms. So that all went out to the staff, students, and parents and guardians on last week. The Central Hill parking, the reason we capitalized a little bit on that is down to the old Holman's building, which is now down, there is that piece or in the circle in the middle. There's a parking lot that's accessible for Somerville High School, which is for 20 spots. So that's can be used as of last week. So the staff has been made aware of that via email as well. The old C-wing, which was this time last year that was coming down, as you know, was down, and below that was where they took out the close to 100,000 tons of soil, and they dug down 54 feet. That was once the C-wing right there. That's another picture of the C-wing, and that's the actual demolition of the C-wing. And then comes the start of this actual piece there is where they dug down 54 feet. And then you can see the actual foundation that came in. And then the steel erection, which began, steel came on site on June 17th. So as of August, as I said today, as you can see, the highest point when we had the steel raising a week, 10 days ago, and you can, if you look in front of that, the topping off ceremony, you can actually see currently today where the actual lecture hall is. Where the actual topping off ceremony was, they added another 25 feet to the front of that where the front part of the lecture hall stage will be. And that's the, what's left, well, in June 2019, what started the atrium, which is basically down to the gym. The gym is what's remaining. If you look to the far right there, the tunnel where automotive once was will soon be sealed up, because that will be, that whole level, which is the basement level of the old CT wing has been gutted out. The plumbing is done in there, the electrical work is done, and that will be machine shop, metal fab, carpentry, heating and air conditioning, and plumbing will be down there. And that's pretty much it at this point. The next piece that you'll see for the actual construction piece was once the demolition company is out of here, hopefully right after Labor Day, they'll begin the foundation in front of the atrium and on the east side, which you can see the white area there, and all that hill will come out, and the back parking lot as well. Can I answer any questions?
Ms. O'Sullivan.
Hi, thank you for that. Just a question about the parking. Can you just remind us what the difference is this year versus last year? I see that you have that added spot with the shuttle. How many spots did we lose going into this year that made that necessary?
Through you. So what came offline this year is the front of the atrium, which was 12 spots, and then the side lot, which was another 22 spots, and then the back lot, which was another 38 spots. We added the 20 spots down the hill, and then we added the shuttle, and then they also have the accessibility to the parking permits are good all around the school district itself. They will be able to use the regular district parking that we give them. They can use it on the street anywhere.
Are there other questions? Can you just quick review too how this information is being communicated to students and families?
Sure.
Thank you.
So we did a Connect Ed, we did a mailing, we did an email, and it went out through X2 as well. And it also went into the target languages as well as with the site picture that I showed you, as well as the bus schedule and the picture of the actual walkways around the school and the modulars.
Thank you. As a parent of a Somerville High School student, I have been amazed by the amount of communication, and I just wanted to make sure that the community at large knows how much information has been going out. I also wanted to thank the two of you. This has been a huge undertaking all summer long for years and years, and this upcoming year is going to be very, very intensive. Logistically, all the learning is still going to go on. There are kids in multiple locations. And I was a little nervous because last week was the barbecues for the incoming freshmen, and I thought, this will be a test because it's going to be the most chaotic year in terms of, I don't want to say chaotic, but kids are in more locations, there's more logistics. And I had a mom stop me on the street, and I thought, uh-oh, here we go. And she said, I am so excited. I was just there last night. It was incredible. There was a scavenger hunt. The student was like, I know where I'm going to go. I know where all my classes are. It was incredible. I mean, to have any rising freshman feel comfortable, but to have that with knowing that there's multiple locations, that speaks to your staff, both in terms of communication, but also I don't want to sound too groovy, but the vibe, the confidence, the calmness that they went in very nervous, seeing cranes and beams, and came home and just said, I'm all ready. I got this. So I want you to know that there's a lot of very appreciative parents and students out there in the community. Superintendent, did you want to say something?
I just also wanted to say that Dr. Curley has done a tremendous amount with Mr. DeSimone around the transportation and the shuttle pieces. I mean, it's been an all effort between finance offices and, Sheila Freitas Harris, who earlier had to reconstruct all of the gym schedules because there's multiple places that the gym's happening. I mean, it really has been literally a village to make it happen. But, leaders like Leo and Sibby call people to it, and I think what we've seen is people respond to that, including their staffs and including the students themselves. So I personally am excited for this year. I'm excited for at the Edgerly building. I think there's a new life and a kind of vibe to it, and I think it's going to be a great year, for everybody. And then they have the new high school to look forward to go back to.
And Carrie, I just want to thank you for relaying that message from the parents, and I wanted to recognize Mike Morgan. He does the Summer Success Program, but he also implemented the orientation week and has been doing the barbecue. So it's pleasing for me to hear that the parents were appreciative of our efforts, and I just wanted to thank Michael. And just one more thing, every time we have, whether it's an open house or the freshman orientation, Leo always does a presentation on the new building, so we're always hammering that away, getting the message out, because we want people to understand and know.
Madam President Ballantyne?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I was just curious, there was some issues with, additional asbestos that was found, 6-7 months ago, and how that's impacted the schedule. Not so much that it was the asbestos, I know it was remediated, but have there been, at least I'd heard rumblings that there might be some delays in the schedule.
Through you, Madam Chair. It actually was a mastic. So it was a black mastic that was around some of the cement poles and columns. It wasn't a delay because I think they learned from the past experience to get in a non-traditional work plan ahead of time through the state. And they have a very good connection with the Department of Environmental Protection, who came out immediately and abated it and then removed it. So there wasn't a delay. At this time, they're not anticipating anything. They found still some over in the atrium building on some of the pillars with some black mastic as well. But as I said, even on these now, they're way ahead of it with the non-traditional work plans. They go in the second they find them, and because they have up to 10 days to get an answer back, and they've been getting a turnaround in less than 4 days. So they're staying ahead of it. So at this point, I haven't heard any expected delays.
So wonderful. So we're on schedule. That's the big message, I guess I want to.
At this point, right, as of today at 4 o'clock, I was briefed again. We're on schedule.
Wonderful.
For phase 2.
Thank you.
And Mr. DeSimone, can you tell us what on schedule means in terms of where we might be in a year from now?
A year from now, September 2020, we should be moved in. So that's. The mayor has made it perfectly clear that that date's non-negotiable, so.
Thank you. And just one more thing. While we are constructing a new building, I don't think everyone knows about the new ed plan. There was just a lovely article in the Somerville Journal talking about all of the work. We're not just building a new building, we're redesigning how education is going to be delivered, both at the high school and Next Way Full Circle. So there is just innovation going on left, right, and center. So to say that your plates are full and the staff is working very hard is an understatement. And so please convey our thanks to everyone up at the high school for all that they're doing to take care of our kids.
Thank you. And I do want to echo what Mary said, too. There's a lot of people down at Central, Dr. Curley, Catherine, Leah Adarando, Mary Kelly, a lot of people that will work behind the scenes on little things that saved a lot of time and effort and were a huge help. So I want to make sure that they get recognized.
Dr. Ackman and then Superintendent?
Yeah, I wanted to say, sort of with what you were saying and with that, Chair Norman mentioned this, but this year is going to be difficult. And so please feel free to come back and ask of us what you need. I hope I speak on behalf of the committee. I want to thank you in advance. I hope your reserves are as full as possible, because it's going to be an amazing, interesting, fascinating time that will definitely be challenging. So thank you, thank you, thank you for everything you've done to get it to here. And thank you, thank you, thank you for the challenges you're going to take on with just gusto during the school year.
Mr. Green?
Building off what Dr. Ackman had said, I know that I think I asked for this back in the spring, but I think it would be extraordinarily helpful if we could have some sort of short document just outlining where students will be or all the programs are for broad distribution, because I think it's important for the larger Somerville community to understand just how much we're asking our staff and our faculty and our students to juggle this year.
Sure. To clarify, that has gone out to high school students. You're talking about pushing it about further. Okay, thank you. That's a great idea.
Through you, Madam Chair, so we can certainly do that. We'll do that through Susanna and the city communication as well. It's a good point. I also think it'd be an opportunity to just give a brief glimpse about the ed plan, because I want to underscore, I want to underscore this, that this isn't just about building a building. It's going to be beautiful and it's going to be a wonderful place. But for us to be ready for it, it requires our staff and our students to really approach education in a different way. And I know the staff has been working on this diligently now for several years. So while they might not be able to physically help with the plant, they certainly are doing their mental lifting with this. So I don't know if you want to say a few words.
So, I mean, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, 21st century skills, communication, collaboration, the design of the building and its adjacencies, so that way, you know, the biology classes and anatomy classes are next to the nursing program, so they can collaborate. But then the collaboration and the envisioning work is going to go beyond just the high school. You know, we'll have them working with hospitals and having students doing internships. And I think I even talked about this last year. Maybe we can have someone do an internship here as part of this committee, someone that wants to get into politics. So we really are striving for critical thinking and collaboration. We're trying to get students not only to collaborate inside the school, within the CTE departments and our academic, but also to involve that into the community. And that's part of the envisioning work that will be happening over the next few years. We've been working on it. It's a gradual release because we have a lot going on. And each year we're going to do more and more. And in a couple of years, you know, the vision is for every student at Somerville High School to have the significant out-of-school learning experience, which could include some type of internship or some community service activity or receiving college credit. And so that's the vision. We do have a partnership this year that's new with Cambridge College right next to Bunker Hill, and we have 15 ELL students taking courses over there for credit starting in 2 weeks. And so these are the types of things that we're going to build on. And it's just a very exciting time, not only for the new building, but the ed plan at the high school. It's very exciting.
Thank you so much. Did you want to?
I did, just the last thing, but I just want to acknowledge that that work has been supported through the Bar Foundation, first in a planning grant, and then in an implementation grant for the next several years, and that's almost $500,000 in sum. And what's impressive about it is that when we went out and looked and spoke with staff that were in buildings that had gone through this type of a project, what we heard again and again was that it was great to move back into the new space, but we weren't ready for it. We hadn't had the chance to work together to prepare ourselves to use the space to its fullest. And so that has been our philosophy all along, is do the work, the mental work and the structural work of the planning of the ed plan at the same time that we're doing the physical building plan. So it's coming together beautifully at Somerville High.
Absolutely, yep. And that was the design of the building. Again, like I mentioned, the adjacencies and the collaboration that will take place, it's all tied together, yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? Madam President.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is really, I guess, for the superintendent. And you're talking about the ed plan. So I will be happy to take up this, my statement here at the end, a new business, or if I can just tell you, highlight what what I want to say. So you're talking about the new education model at the high school. And I have heard a tremendous amount of talk this summer about, so what next with Powder House Studios? We think it's going on. It's not. If it's not happened because the school committee voted it down. So then what is Somerville, the city of Somerville, going to do? How are they going to move innovation? So I think it would be helpful for the community as large, as much time as we devoted to the discussion about innovation around the Powder House Studios, that you, as superintendent, could share with us in sort of a more formal setting here to say, what does that innovation mean at the high school? How does it dovetail with what we heard come out of the Powder House School discussion? Because I believe that the community is unclear on it. And they still think something is going to happen. And if it is, I just think there has to be a tremendous amount of clarity on what the steps are, or what point in the process we are in terms of how we define, or the administration would like to define innovation in a high school setting.
Thank you for the question, through you, Madam Chair. So I think the Powder House conversation is sort of its own encapsulation, but I think the conversation about what innovation looks like at middle and high school grades is ripe for presentation. This is something we actually presented a bit of in ed programs last year. Not all of the details are worked out yet for Somerville High through the BAR grant or for Full Circle Next Wave, but their implementation grant is now for a 3-year. So they are due to present in the fall. Sort of this is how it's going to look year 1, year 2, year 3. There are some bargainable areas of that, so I can't comment on some of them, such as the schedule. But in terms of the concepts, the philosophies, the idea around student-centered, project-based learning, performance-based tasks, things like that, we 100% could, would be happy to do a presentation of that, where I think the committee that has been working on this at Somerville High and the committee that has been working on this at Full Circle could present that to be able to show. There's so many wonderful, innovative ideas that are responsible in the sense of our students, the students that are going to be there, and what the innovation will mean to them in terms of their readying for 21st century. And I think for me, in terms of innovation, that's one of the big litmus tests, is that it is responsible innovation, not just innovation for the sake of innovation. So that's what we're moving forward with. We're very fortunate that it's being supported so well through a very reputable foundation. And I know that, Sibby, Leo, and their staff, as well as Margaret at Full Circle Next Wave, would be happy to come and be able to talk about it. And I can make some translation in terms of what does that, what were some of the concepts from Powder House, and, where do we see them embedded? But you'll hear a lot of the similar terminology.
Thank you. And just a follow-up point is, I think a communication strategy behind that would be helpful too. I'm sure we have, similar emails that we heard from in terms of the Powder House Studios, but it would be nice to roll that out in a really sort of strategic way to make sure that people hear it. Because when I talk about the BAR Foundation or the New Ed, nobody knows really anything about it.
Sure. So we can roll that
Thank
together
you.
once we get through the beginning liftoff at Edgerly. But yes, we can.
Okay, I have Mr. Futrell, then Mr. Green, then Ms. Patone. A very quick follow-up.
There is a nice write-up on the website about the BAR Foundation grant. I can find the link and send it to you. I've pushed it out a few times, and I think it's very comprehensive. It doesn't have all the updates that Mary referenced in terms of what it's going to look like, but I encourage to push that out as well. So, sorry.
Okay, Mr. Futrell, thank you for that. Mr. Futrell?
Thank you. I appreciate the question asked by my colleague, President Valentine, on innovation. And I, just with the number of parents that have, reached out about it, one of the things as we went through and then got to the, the backside of the Powder House discussion, I felt, as a representative in this body, that I could have, that we probably could have better told a story about innovation here within the district that already exists and the stuff that we still need to do. So, easy for me to say on my last day, but I'd encourage my colleagues to, if we had opened PHA, imagine the kind of energy we would have been out in the community talking about it and fielding questions and whatnot. We didn't do that, but we still are doing a ton of innovation work. So, maybe there's some energy out there to have, coffee meetings or community meetings and whatnot, where we get to kind of talk about some of this stuff in a way that's, maybe not related to one school or one grant, but really whole district. Because I think there's some good stories here to be told that maybe we're not saying as loudly. So that's all.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
So I think, to build on everyone's point, I feel like there's already some low-hanging fruit. Like, presumably, for a grant the size of the BAR Foundation, we've done a grant report. It'd be great if you could share that with the school committee. That way we could read it, we could, at both the proposal and I assume the final response on what was done with the money, which would help us be able to tell that story. Seems like easy low-hanging fruit.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. DeSimone or Mr. Lagambina? Gentlemen, thank you for another extremely long day on behalf of our kids. Thank you. Good luck on Wednesday, the first day when they come and join us. Superintendent, would you like to pick up with a personnel report?
Please. So on the personnel report, I just want to bring your attention to a few of the retirements that have happened over the summer, or at the very end, and thank those employees. So we would like to thank Maria Medeiros, who's a grade 3 teacher, or was a grade 3 teacher at Winter Hill, for her retirement, which will be coming up after 23 years of service. We would like to thank Joan Duffy, who's an ECIP teacher at the Capuano, for 18 years of service. Etna Sweeney, who has had a variety of positions in the district, 32 years as a special education teacher, most recently at Somerville High School. Teresa Lopez, Dr. Lopez, who was only with us 3 years, but had quite an impact as an ESL instructional specialist, where she actually carved out a wonderful system for assessment for our ELL students. Nayo Schiff, who is or was the ELL program administrator at Scale for her 28 years and 5 months of service. And Doreen Carreri, who is the full-time computer operator at Scale, did a tremendous amount with data and technology for her 37 years of service. So we thank all of these educators for their tremendous value that they've added to the children of Somerville.
Superintendent, I had one quick question. There was a number of positions that I had not seen, so many at one time, turning into permanent jobs. Can you speak to what that indicates, and is this a trend, and how does this fit into our human capital plan?
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. So this really is a wonderful trend in that these are often people who come in temporary positions and have sort of worked their way up through the organization. So many of them held a different position at one point, and then they were able, through professional development, through leadership programming, through certification work, to be able to sort of work themselves up into a permanent position. This is one of our goals in human capital, is to be able to develop both from within, but also to hire extremely, diverse and talented staff from outside. So you see this sort of nicely coming together, whether it's paraprofessionals doing their teaching internship with us and then becoming a teacher, or whether it's teachers who have done their leadership internship with us and who then can become a dean of students, assistant principal, or a director. Sheila was an example earlier tonight, so wasn't Leslie Less at West. So there's a number of people that you will see that started in one capacity in the district and through time and effort have yielded a different position.
Thank you for that explanation. And does that conclude the superintendent's report?
It does not yet.
Okay.
Since I haven't had the fortune of seeing you for a couple of months, I have a bit to share of the wonderful things that happened over the summer. So we had a tremendous summer where teachers were officially back in session today, and paras will be joining us tomorrow, although there were many paras throughout district training today. Students in grades 1 to 12 are back in session this Wednesday, August 28th, for a half day, and the first day of school for pre-K and kindergarten students will be on Tuesday, September 3rd, just as reminders. We welcomed many new educators to our district last week, and we're so excited to have them join our family here. The energy and excitement is palpable, and we're looking forward to another outstanding year here in SPS. As you know, getting our schools ready for the school year is a community effort. We're so appreciative of the support we get from many partners, our parents and guardians, other city departments, community agencies, our mayor and his staff, our dedicated school committee and city council members, and our many neighbors who are committed to supporting the SPS youth. I want to give a special shout out to our friends at Somerville DPW. Not only do they work tirelessly to get our schools ready and in the best shape possible to welcome our students and staff for the new year, but they also work hard throughout the summer to maintain our schools during summer programming. We appreciate your support and the tremendous pride that you take in your work to DPW and are thankful to have you on the team. I had comment after comment from staff today on how wonderful the buildings looked. And this was our most programmed summer, which I'll get to in a minute. So it's a very quick turnaround from the time we end summer programming to when we begin school. So kudos to DPW. Our summer programming continues to grow and thrive thanks to the commitment of many community partners. This summer, more than 1,500 students participated, so that's our all-time high. in one or more of our district-led or partner-led programs. Students had many program options available to them to support their summer learning. Among them, some were ones that we've had before, like SPELL, community schools, Adventure Camp, the Calculus Project, which had over 85 students this year, several music camps, summer special education programs. We hosted specifically a literacy institute for the Department of Education that the commissioner came and visited that had 40 of our students and a good 25 of our staff. Breakthrough Greater Boston, Citizen Schools, and summer rec programs, the Junior Police Academy, and many others. So I just want to thank everyone that was involved for an outstanding summer of learning and exploring. We also once again want to thank Cradles to Crayons and the Summer Kiwanis Club. Both of them have donated backpacks. We literally will be giving out around 2,000 backpacks this year, which is amazing. And we couldn't do it without their support. We just actually had a wonderful update on the Somerville High Building Project. I encourage everybody to make sure that they're looking on the website for the updates and staying tuned to their email, as this is how we're pushing the information out. And certainly if they have questions, they can contact Somerville High School, they can contact my office. I also, just in terms of the projects, we spoke a bit about the 3-year worth of work of the Barr Foundation. But in addition to that, this is the first time in the Somerville Public Schools that if you were to use free and reduced lunch, we will be over the tipping point of 50% of students' free and reduced lunch involved in 5 to 8 programming. And that's programming that we have partnered with many entities on. When I came in, it was at 22%. So this is my beginning of my 5th year. So in 4 years, we've made tremendous growth. And also, I just want to give a shout out to community schools. They are in a partnership. This past year, we talked a bit about the academic block for the pre-K to 5, and they've partnered with Bell Excel, which is an academy that comes in and does training for all of the community school staff, and really looks at that enrichment block as to how to be able to approach it more systemically. So you'll see some changes if your child's in community schools during that block that I think will be helpful in enriching to all of our students. Also, just a big shout out to the cross-sector work we're doing around the birth to pre-K structures and strengthening our partnership with early childhood and daycare providers across the city. We received both a $1.5 million grant, which was from the state, which was the CPPI grant, and a $1.5 million grant through a private entity, the Commonwealth Children's Fund. So with that $3 million, it's really allowing us to build out our coaching infrastructure and work on both building out classrooms and slots and allowing the teachers that are in the early childhood centers and daycares to collaborate more strongly with the staff that's here in SPS. And finally, for SFLC, they took on, as you remember, a big strategic planning. And so they have done a great job in relaunching themselves with family connections in each of the schools. And this will be something that parents will get more information on. But I think the restructuring, if you have not been to the SFLC of late, you should go back down, because the enrollment center looks dramatically different and the SFLC side looks dramatically different. And I think it's that reorganization of both function of what people are doing, but also the physical space that our families are very, very impressed and happy with. Believe it or not, back to school nights will be coming up soon. So please check our website. There'll be a calendar of events with the complete schedule. And just once again, I just want to mention grades 1 to 12 this Wednesday, August 28th, which is half day for all students, noon dismissal. And then Thursday, August 29th is a full day for students. It's just a really important time for our students to come back in, meet their teachers, meet their classmates, hear about any changes that are going on within the schools. There's no school for students on the 30th, and all schools and district offices will be closed on Monday, September 2nd, in observation of Labor Day. The only other thing I just want to share for myself is that I had a grandson. And so, so this is 3 now. I told him to slow down. But really, as we continue to have, grandbabies, it just really makes me want to work all the harder for the kids we have. So it's pretty humbling and amazing experience. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that report of all the good work happening over the summer, and congratulations to your family, your ever-expanding family. That's very exciting. Sure, Ms. O'Sullivan.
I guess a comment and a question. I think it's amazing to our supporters that donated the 2,000 backpacks. That's awesome. And I'm just curious about, maybe you can speak a little bit about the supplies. You know, we made our annual trip to the office supply store the other day to get the list. And I'm just curious about where, do we have support for kids in getting the supplies for those backpacks?
Through Madam Chair. So the book bags actually come with supplies. And what was very nice was that it's a great mixture of age ranges. Cradles for Crayons, which does a great job with the K-8s, and the Kiwanis Club really had backpacks that are more suitable for the high schoolers, slightly bigger. And so I think it's this year in particular, with the supplies that are in them, the students are going to really be able to hit the ground running.
So, can I just follow up?
Absolutely.
That's amazing. But I also wonder, does that cover the kids, you know, the kids that are maybe not getting the backpack, but there must be kids that need, you know, and each teacher has sort of their unique list of supplies. I know for all the wonderful things we do here that I'm sure those kids are given supplies. I guess I just want to acknowledge that too, and thank you for that.
Mr. Green?
Two things. One, I also want to acknowledge that Tufts Health Plan was providing backpacks and supplies to all the students who attended the Mystic Picnic last week. So more students were also getting backpacks and supplies. And relatedly, it is, you know, overdue, but finally getting national attention, the issue of teachers who buy their classes out of their own pocket. And I'm sure that happens here in Somerville. It would be wonderful if we could poll our teachers and find out what that number looks like how much are our teachers actually spending on supplying their own classrooms every year, so that we can at least begin to tackle that problem here in Somerville.
Thank you. Superintendent?
Through Madam Chair, thank you. That's a great suggestion. We can certainly do that. I also, just looking at my notes, I also wanted to give a shout out to Michelle Kelly. So as you know, our students are off at various sports camps, soccer, football, cheerleading happened earlier. And, you know, we always, as well prepared as we are, or as careful as the students are, there's occasionally, you know, where a student gets exhausted, dehydrated, or, you know, breaks something, falls, pulls something. We had a situation at one of the camps where one of our students was extremely dehydrated and had sort of a pre-existing issue. And because Michelle Kelly, who is our head physical trainer, knew the student, the family, the situation, and the signs, was able to identify right away that the student needed to get into an ambulance and go to the hospital. And honestly, had she not done that, it might have not turned out as well as it did for the student, that the student was able to get timely medical attention and is going to be fine. But it's that kind of deep knowledge and dedication that Michelle brings to the job. So I would be remiss in not thanking her on behalf of all of us for just everything she does for the Somerville High School students.
Thank you for that addition. Any further questions? Okay. We are going to move on to item number 5, report of subcommittees. We're going to start with A, school committee meeting for finance and facilities meeting of the whole from April 24th. Mr. Futrell, would you like to just go through all of your reports? Okay, thank you so much. Your grand finale.
All right, start the clock. So on Wednesday, April 24th, the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee met, beginning at 6:38 p.m. With myself, Mr. Green, Ms. Patone, Ms. Norman, Ms. O'Sullivan, and Ms. Palmer in attendance. As this meeting was part of our budget deliberation, we discussed themes of equity, access, and opportunity, which are the overarching themes the superintendent used to describe her administration's investments for the coming year. On equity, we discussed specifically how professional development could be used to advance equity, how we must look at equity of resources, and how a weighted student formula would help with this work, and how we must look at student support and personnel. On access, we discussed changes the district has made to ECIP and the inequities addressed by adjusting the schedule, as well as programming to support students with ASD, Down syndrome, as well as SLIFE and ELL students. We also discussed transportation and athletics, agreeing that we needed to pay special attention on after-school programming and inclusion in middle school grades. We also discussed opportunity, specifically exploring the addition of a college and career position, as well as focusing on out-of-school time with en route, world languages, electives, and others. We discussed adding an equity position, the reorganization of the SFLC to make it more responsive to the community's needs, additional interpretation and translation support, theater arts, and addressing school lunch debt. Of note, the district decided to provide universal lunch at high school starting this school year. Finally, the school committee weighed in with their own requests. While not exhaustive, this list included legal counsel addressing the displacement from Freedom School, feminine hygiene products, innovation plans, and a consultant for project-based learning, among other supports. The executive director for Groundwork Somerville was in attendance and shared her team's work in support of SPS goals. The meeting adjourned at 8:30 p.m. with no motions made. I move to accept the report of Finance and Facilities from April 24.
Second.
Excuse me, there's a motion by Mr. Futrell, seconded by Dr. Ackman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Thank you for that report. We will now move on to, excuse me.
Can we, as a request, can we just hear all the reports and then do a motion to approve them all? So rather than having to do a motion for each?
Are you comfortable with that, Mr.? Let's do that. I think that's a lovely idea. Thank you, Mr. Green.
I have two more. The report of the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee met on Tuesday, May 21 at 6:05 p.m. In attendance were myself, Ms. Norman, Ms. Fatone, Mr. Green, Dr. Ackman, Ms. Palmer, and Ms. O'Sullivan, as well as Superintendent Skipper and Finance Director Gorski. There were 2 people in the audience. This meeting was intended to review the April 2019 finances, as well as vote on the fiscal year 2020 budget as presented by Superintendent Skipper and amended by this school committee. We discussed the year-to-date expenditures through April 2019 and the bill rolls for the same month. I need to go back and reference my notes. I don't have a record of us voting on bill rolls. I suspect that this was the meeting that we found an issue and then push it to the next meeting, but I couldn't find notes to support that. So I'll follow up on this. After that discussion, following a 6-month process and 2 final weeks of deliberation since Superintendent Skipper presented her budget, Ms. Patone moved to approve a fiscal year 2020 budget in the total amount of $76,257,481, of which $60,259,269 is allocated for salaries, and the remaining $15,860,712 allocated to operations. Ms. Ackman seconded the motion. On a roll call vote, those in favor were Ms. Patone, Dr. Ackman, Ms. Palmer, Ms. O'Sullivan, Mr. Green, and myself. Absent were Ms. Normand, who had to leave in the middle of the meeting to another commitment, President Ballantyne, and Mayor Curtatone. The motion passed. The meeting adjourned at 7 p.m. I'll follow now with the report of Finance and Facilities from June 17, 2019. I'll note that the agenda tonight says June 19. The meeting was initially scheduled for Wednesday, June 19, and then rescheduled for Monday, June 17. And we did kind of a marathon meeting with 4 that evening. This meeting began at 5:33 p.m. with Mr. Green, Ms. O'Sullivan, and myself in attendance with Superintendent Skipper and Finance Director Gorski. At this meeting, we discussed the May expenditure report and the May 2019 bill rolls, the passage of which was moved and seconded by Mr. Green and Ms. O'Sullivan, respectively. The motion passed unanimously. We then discussed the fall agenda for the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee, agreeing to the following tentative schedule. September, weighted student formula. Specifically, we want to talk about what's the value of using this tool in Somerville, what are our values. The administration agreed to look at a couple schools specifically to help drive discussion, as well as other districts throughout the fall. In October, again, we put weighted student formula on there. Specifically, what exactly does it look like when applied to a couple schools in Somerville? In November, again, weighted student formula, as well as out-of-school funding. And in December, more focused on out-of-school funding. Of course, this agenda is subject to change with the new chair of Finance and Facilities and upon any new input from the district. But this agenda should help guide the way forward heading into the fall. The meeting adjourned at 6:04 p.m. I move to accept the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee report of May 21 and June 17, 2019.
There is a motion by Mr. Futrell, seconded by Mr. Green. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
I also move to approve the bill rolls from the June 17 meeting.
Here is a motion to approve the bill rolls by Mr. Futrell, seconded by Mr. Green. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The bill rolls are approved. Thank you, Mr. Futrell, for your leadership through several budget cycles and also keeping us up to date. We will now move on to item number D, School Committee Meeting for Education Programs and Instruction. Ms. O'Sullivan?
This was the fourth of that marathon night meeting, the fourth meeting in that. So, Ed Programs and Instruction Subcommittee held a meeting on June 17th. In attendance were myself, Dr. Ackman, and Ms. Patone. Participating district staff included Superintendent Mary Skipper, Assistant Superintendent Almia Beta, and incoming Assistant Superintendent Chad Mazza. I called the meeting to order at 8:35 p.m. There were two topics on the agenda, an initial discussion of a memo on X-Block and a discussion of potential agenda topics for the next school year. X-Block is a daily 40-minute period outside of the core instructional time where students in grades 1 through 8 can get extra support or work on enrichment activities. For example, students can participate in weekly band or strings, or work with a reading specialist, or work in a small group with a classroom teacher during X-Block. This initiative was implemented several years ago, and committee members had questions about how it was going so far, whether the district was getting what it wanted out of the initiative, and how to assess the effectiveness of it. District staff stated that X-Block can look different at each grade and at each school. Also, at the 3 schools that are providing Spanish instruction for all students in grades 7 and 8, that would be Kennedy, West, and Argenziano, there's no longer this block set aside for interventions at those grades, but students still receive the interventions when necessary. A longer discussion about the effectiveness of X-Block is warranted in the future with feedback gathered from teachers, administrators, and students, along with other data. The superintendent suggested that the district instructional leadership team get involved in the review. We then discussed a list of potential topics for the 2019-20 school year, some of which had come up during our regular school committee business, and others submitted by subcommittee members and district staff. Of all the topics, the following had the most interest, and these are listed in no particular order. Trauma sensitivity training in the district, a focus on the academic side of Tier 1 instruction, a plan for the presentations of school improvement plans to the school committee, the early education connection to the By All Means initiative, a renewed focus on literacy in the district, further discussion of X-Block, differentiation, what's the goal and what's actually happening, middle grade offerings, what is common across schools and what is school specific, the high school schedule, in particular the need for more flexibility, advanced placement classes at the high school and the impact of the weighted GPA, the high school health curriculum updates, and the Bar Foundation work with the high school and with Next Wave Full Circle, some of which have already come up tonight's meeting. We noted then that I and Mr. Mazza would get together over the summer to discuss that, which we did do. We put together a tentative list, which I know is subject to, at least starting in January, the next Ed Programs chair. But we left it at that. And we also have made some work on the school improvement plans, which I can share at another time. Finally, we approved the minutes from May, and with no further business, we adjourned at 9:28 p.m. I move to accept the report of the June 17th Ed Programs Subcommittee meeting.
Second.
There is a motion by Ms. Sullivan, seconded by Ms. Patone. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Thank you for submitting that thoughtful report. We will now move down to item number 6, new business, and we were going to go, we've already done A, so we will go to B, homework policy update. And I would like to welcome interim assistant Superintendent Chad Mazza in his official capacity tonight. You've joined us for several meetings over the spring as ramping up, so welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. As you know, with the homework policy, one of the key drivers is teacher voice. And one of the things that came out of my meeting with Rami Bridge, Steve Stefanich, and Megan Brady, and Rami and Megan are in the back tonight, was really to design focus groups centered on teacher voice. We want a comprehensive plan that would engage teachers from all schools at different points during the school year, so we would get a wide representation of responses to the revised policy and what teachers would want as we would move forward. And again, all schools would be involved. We decided that teachers this year have 10 hours of professional development that they have control over. So we decided that one of those 10 hours would be devoted, if they chose, to participate in a focus group at their school. So the focus groups now are part of the district professional development catalog that went out today. I want to thank Karen Woods for getting that out. I mean, it was, I think, 46 or 47 pages worth of professional development offerings, which is incredible, quite honestly. There'll be 2 facilitators at each focus group session. And the sessions will run from October through January. We wanted to give September for teachers to get back, get focused, work on their class management, get settled, and then if they chose to participate in the focus groups, they certainly could. There will be 3 in October, 2 focus group sessions in November and December, and 3 in January. We figure that November and December are shortened months with holidays, so that's why they have less focus group opportunities. And then after the focus groups end in January, I would come and present the data and the findings from those focus groups, because I think it's important to report out on what we found. I will tell you that this process has really been collaborative. I want to thank Rami, I want to thank Megan, for their partnership in the process. We're all kind of new to our roles, and I think this is a great beginning, to a productive relationship. I also want to thank Karen Woods and Jessica Boston Davis, who will be the facilitators for many of the focus groups. But I will say that this really places value on teacher voice in the process, and I think that's an important piece that we recognize, and that's why we're being so comprehensive with our focus groups as we move forward.
Thank you for that report. Ms. Patone?
Through you, the chair, to Mr. Mazza, thank you, first of all, for doing this collaborative work with teachers and staff, and this is incredibly important to this process. I'm curious, are the focus group findings going to be presented back to the school committee? How does this information get merged in with parent input? What's your process, or have you not aligned the next steps in the process, but figuring out how we all collaborate moving forward? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So once we get all the data, I will present to the school committee what we found through the 4 months beginning in October, ending in January, because I think it's important that we all hear what teachers have to say in regards to this policy, and then we'll mirror with what parents had to say, and then we'll see how we move forward.
Mr. Green, you had a question?
2 things. One short bookkeeping note for the people at home. Would you mind saying, for the people who may not know, who Rami and Megan are?
So yes, Rami is the president of the STA, and Megan, I believe, is the vice president of the STA.
And so then now my more substantive question is, just if we could be as transparent as possible, how is this process for getting teacher voice substantially different from the process that was done before the policy came to us the last time, which we were assured was part of the reason it took 2 years from when it was issued to get to us? Teacher voice was part of the process. Can you explain this a little more about that?
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. I think one of the things that we tend to do is we send surveys instead of having conversations. And I think the focus group now, it's a focus on conversations with teachers, sitting in a group, talking about feelings, talking about what they do as far as the teacher role, how much homework they give, how it affects students, how it affects families. So I think we're placing an effort on that voice through conversation. Surveys are very important, and I think they give us some data, but sitting and talking with people, I think, is really where you learn how people feel. because you can read a comment, but you can't ascertain how that comment makes people feel. So I think we're placing an effort on the conversation. I'm not sure what happened, a few years ago, but I know that moving forward, I think we're looking forward to this process.
Ms. O'Sullivan?
Thank you for that, and I completely agree that getting the input in multiple ways. And I do want to point out, I appreciate Mr. Green's question, because 2 years ago, when I was looking at the notes from 2 years ago, there was a plan for focus groups, and I'm not sure if those, I was trying to go through the notes, whether they actually happened. So I know that it's challenging, and I appreciate that solution of having it be during one of the PD hours. I think that might be a way, because I understand people are very busy, and it's hard to find time probably for this. But I do want to be cautious about how is this going to be different, and making sure that if we're looking for more robust data, that we are paying attention to that, not just from teachers, but from all stakeholders.
Skipper, did you want to weigh in?
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. So I think it's a great question in that, the original process, although I do think there was limited amounts of focus groups, they weren't representative of the overall STA. And I think we saw a similar thing on the parents, to be honest with you. For instance, our ELL parents, their voice was not as active in the surveying as I would have liked to see it. And so I think, part of this is the methodology. Survey can only get to a certain part. I think the focus groups allow people to have a little bit more in-depth conversation. And by us actually dedicating or allowing an hour of the PD, I think we will get a much more broad representation within STA. But additionally with the paras, it's also working with SFLC to do deeper outreach so that we really are getting feedback from all groups of parents in the city. And that may mean playgrounds, that may mean going to places of where parents gather, it may mean open houses. But I think we have to do that due diligence, because when you make a policy that impacts the entire district and not just one segment, we have to make sure we have representative voice. And I think that was one of the difficulties. We did the best we could, but we just using the limitations of the surveying, we just didn't reach all edges of the district.
Thank you for that. Mr. Sullivan, you had a follow-up?
Well, it's a different point. I appreciate that, and I think the other input I would like to have in this is from the high school. There's a lot of conversation about this sort of building up to the high school, and I think and I absolutely support that, and I want that to be a reasonable bridge from 8th grade into the high school. What do the 9th grade teachers expect of students? I think that would be an important part of this.
Thank you. Mr. Mazza?
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, they are part of this process. We haven't left them out for sure because they are an integral part. And they'll have their own focus groups, just like the K-8s and K-5 with Brown, because that is critical.
Superintendent Skipper?
Through Madam Chair. And I think the high school is a good case in point. One of the pieces of data we'll be showing in the early fall is the results of the APs. Which were wonderful. We had increase in access, we had increase in performance, and of both in almost every subgroup. My concern is the cumulative impact as kids take more and more APs, because each AP comes with a sort of standard amount of work that's expected by the College Board. You're taking a college level course. So I think as we have this conversation at the high school level, and you see it to some degree at the middle, where the students are now taking discrete content subjects and they have discrete teachers for it, that's where really it becomes a little bit harder to actually quantify what's a reasonable amount of homework. So for instance, if a student's taking 3 APs, to think that student is going to be doing less than an hour in each of those APs, or 45 minutes, isn't going to happen. So I think some of this is also an invitation to a broader conversation around what's a healthy balance for our students in pushing them with rigor, but also not pushing them over the edge of rigor. So I think that's going to be a healthy and important one on the high school as well.
Thank you. Mr. Mazza, as we're about to launch into this school year, can you explain to families what is the current homework policy, where we're at that, what they can expect, I think there's been some confusion about which policy we're using right now.
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. So the policy that we're using right now is the policy that was basically in effect for most of last year. The revised policy is not in effect right now, so we are back to the original policy that we've had for many years in the district.
Thank you for that clarification. Anyone else want to? Okay. Fantastic. Well, I am thrilled that we will be having a much more in-depth discussion. Item number C is, Ward 2 vacancy update. So I'm going to break it down in two ways. One, an explanation of the process, because we haven't had that in a public forum, and then to lay out a timetable. So we have, I hope everyone has read, City Solicitor Frank Wright did a wonderful job of looking at the city charter, the school committee policies, and in our policies we say we use Robert's rules. So taking those three different structures and balancing it out and giving us a memo on how we can proceed for this to fill the Ward 2 seat. So I'm going to just read some of it just so that we're all very clear and it's very transparent. So the process for addressing the anticipated vacancy on the school committee. As to the vacancy, the charter states in pertinent part that if a vacancy in the office of the school committee shall occur less than 1 year prior to any regular municipal election, which is the situation we're in now, it shall be filled for the remainder of the term by a ballot of the remaining members of the school committee. The member so elected to be a qualified voter of the ward in the representation of which on said committee the vacancy exists. I'm not going to read all of the details, but the main gist, and then I will open up for questions. However, the charter's use of the word, nominations are followed by an election, and a majority vote for one nominee is required to elect. However, the charter's use of the word ballot indicates that the members must cast a written vote, and Robert's Rules states an assembly, quote, cannot make a valid voice vote election when the charter requires an election by the ballot. This is where Mr. Wright did a wonderful job of interpreting our competing policies. While ballot voting is generally secret, the charter's ballot requirement must be read harmoniously with the disclosure requirements of the open meeting law. And in my opinion, individual members are required to cast their written ballots without disclosing their vote to each other at the time of casting their individual votes, but immediately after all the ballots are cast and collected, the chair must read aloud the ballot, including the name of the school committee member, voter, and his or her vote. So it would be member Doe cast her ballot for Jane Rowe. As to the uncontested candidate, the November city election for the seat being vacated, the charter does not award the seat to an uncontested candidate. Any member may nominate a qualified voter of the ward to fill the unexpired term. To the extent a school committee member wishes to nominate the one uncontested candidate, that person may be nominated. While the likelihood is remote, an uncontested candidate does not automatically assume a seat, as the candidate could lose a seat to a write-in candidate at the election. So I know that was very technical, but I want to be very clear about what the process is going forward. Mr. Futrell?
Yep, thank you for doing this. And I know I previously brought this up and recommended to my colleagues that they just nominate the person who's running. So I appreciate the distinction here, and actually it's an important one that I hadn't thought of, that she might not actually win for a variety of other reasons that we can't foresee. So I'll just say thanks for doing that. Are we, my understanding it's your intent that we go through that process tonight, is that correct? No.
No. I would like to entertain any more questions about the process, and then I will lay out the time frame. Are there any other questions? Is it clear? So in a follow-up conversation I had with Mr. Wright, he advises us not to fill the seat until it is actually vacated. So tonight, the seat is not vacated. So that would mean I would like to have that vote on our next one, which is Monday, September 9th. However, there are some anticipated absences, and I would like to ask the body whether there's some objection to going to the 9th, or whether we should move it back. Mr. Green.
I would object to doing it on the 9th. I would like to see it done in 2 stages. I would like to see any nominations brought forth on the 9th, be it in writing from members who won't be here, or however it's, because the memo gave a number of ways in which nominations can be brought to the body, including people can nominate themselves. So I would like to see us do the nominations and take all candidates by that meeting on the 9th, and then have the vote at the following meeting.
Would anyone like to comment on that? Mr. Futrell.
Yeah, I won't presume to understand the reasoning behind that. Perhaps it's for consideration. I would urge my colleagues not to leave Ward 2 unrepresented for as long as possible. So, I bet this is a process that can happen in an evening.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
To be clear, my purpose for here is transparency of process. As the memo points out, it may be that some other qualified voter is interested in the position, and I would like that opportunity to be made available. And if that's the case, then I would prefer to have members have time to deliberate that. If there's only one nomination, that's a different beast, but there could in theory be more than one.
Mr. Futrell.
Yep. Adding time to it doesn't add transparency to the process, it just adds time. So the process is transparent as the chair has laid it out. And it sounds like what you're saying is you'd appreciate more time to deliberate and consider. And we have a process to deliberate in person here, but what you described doesn't actually add transparency.
Would anyone else like to weigh in? And then I would like to weigh in too. Ms. Patone.
Thank you, Chair Norman. I think my initial reaction when I was first studying this was similar to Mr. Green's, is whether or not we need to give people an opportunity to nominate themselves. But that also necessitates us having some kind of process to put it out there and communicate, saying that there's an open seat, and do people want to nominate themselves, or do we want to nominate others? And I don't think we have a forum or mechanism to do that. So I was leaning more towards, well, you know what, there was an open seat. By the time end of May, everyone had an opportunity to put themselves forward, to get nomination papers, to put themselves in for the position, and we had one person that did it. So I kind of was thinking about, for expediency and having an opportunity for Ward 2 to be represented, but sooner rather than later. So I kind of went through that cycle of what you're saying is that, you wanted it to be, I'm interpreting as that, Mr. Green, that you want it to be an opportunity for anybody who can come forward to come forward and put themselves in as a qualified candidate. But in the timetable, I felt like I was leaning towards to what Mr. Futrell was recommending. But I could go either way on it. Thank you.
To be clear, my understanding from the memo and from discussions with Mr. Wright is the remaining members of this body would be the ones putting a name into nomination. This is not a public process where anyone can, it's not the same thing as going to the elections office and pulling papers, that it would be the members of this body to put a name forward. I think that would be on us to put the word out, and I would not, I would like to do it in one meeting. And I think that there is enough time, whether we did it on the 9th or if we pushed it out one more week, or one more meeting to the 20th, I think it's the 6th. That would be enough time. But I would like to, I think the process has been outlined as one meeting. I mean, that's how I would like to proceed. The outreach that individuals do before that is at your own discretion. Mr. Futrell?
And maybe to address some of the things that I think my colleague Mr. Green is trying to get to, maybe there's an agreement amongst the school committee that if you are intending to nominate somebody, that you just email each other ahead of time and say, hey, I'm going to nominate. No, can't do that.
No.
That's a terrible idea.
With that,
terrible idea.
We do not advise that. But what I would say is, Mr. Futrell, how long ago did you make the announcement that you were not running again? And then when did you make the announcement that you were resigning because you have this incredible opportunity?
I would have made that announcement, May, in the month of May.
So I think if people have been interested, I would hope they would have come forward or spoken to one of us. My point in being very detailed in what the process is to get that out there. It is the 26th, the next meeting, even if we were to do it on the 19th, is 2 weeks away. So at that meeting, anyone can nominate someone, a resident of Ward 2. So there is time for that recruitment, if you would, or discussions, or people approach you to have questions. When we do this vote, any number of names from Ward 2 can be put into nomination, and that the remaining bodies, the person would move forward, has to get a majority of the votes. Does that clarify? Are there further questions about the process? Mr. Futrell? Okay. Okay, so knowing that we are anticipating at least 2 absences, although I've confirmed a quorum as of now for the 9th, is there anyone in the body who would like us not to proceed on the 9th, but to move to the 26th? 23rd. Thank you, Catherine. 23rd. That's what we want. We want a transparent process with accurate information. 23rd. Thank you. So if we were to proceed on the September 29th, is there any objection? I'm going to put it on the agenda for the 29th. If anyone, the 9th, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, it's been a long night. I'm going to say that again to be explicitly clear. This will be on the agenda for the Monday, September 9th agenda to take a vote, hoping we have a quorum, so for everyone's intended to be there. At that time, any member who is here can put a name into nomination. So whatever outreach conversations you'd like to have, there's 2 weeks between now and the vote to be able to do that. And I think that is a balance between outreach, but also, as Mr. Furchell said, giving the residents of Ward 2 a representation as soon as possible. All right, let's check that item off it. Okay. Thank you for that discussion. Moving on to item D, the FY19 scale and diploma request. Is there a motion?
I move to accept the superintendent's recommendation to grant a ADP diploma to Papa Mark Anthony Antwine of Cambridge, Massachusetts.
There is a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Dr. Ackman. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations to our recent graduate. Item number E, no, letter E, whew, acceptance of donations.
I move to accept the following donations with gratitude. 1,750 backpacks from Cradles to Crayons, value to be determined, donated to the Somerville School District. $500 from Maureen Oakes, also donated to the district. A grant of $87,309 to support SPS's prenatal and both birth to 5 partnership from the Boston Foundation. A grant of $300,000 from the Bar Foundation to support Somerville High School, and a grant of $200,000 from the Bar Foundation to support S-Wave and Full Circle.
There is a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Mr. Futrell. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you all for those very generous donations. Are there items from board members? Mr. Green, Ms. Patone, then Ms. Patone. Yeah.
In accordance with the gender identity support policy we passed about a year and a half ago now, part of that policy was that we as a body would receive regular updates on the status of the trainings and how it's being implemented in the district. So I'm officially requesting the first of those updates at some point in the near future.
Did you get that, Superintendent? Thank you. Ms. Patone?
Thank you, through you, Chair Norman. 2 things. One, I had put a question or request about whether or not the district was able or willing to create Google calendars for the district calendar as well as for the high school calendar. I think it would be a great service to families that they could just, access the Google Calendar if that's a possibility. And I think I had sent an email to Mr. Breslin and Susanna Hernandez-Moring. Again, if it's not possible, I totally understand that, but I just wanted to put that request in again because I think it'd be super helpful.
Okay.
I apologize. The second thing that has come to my attention a few times, and I don't think we have it on any agenda right now, including ed programs, and I just want to put it forward for consideration, is the cell phone use policies within schools. It's something that we talk about a lot, but I don't feel like we've made that a priority. Again, if either the school committee or the district doesn't feel like it's a priority right now, I understand, but I would like it to be considered for a future school committee.
That would be, okay. Well, a policy consideration would start at rules?
Can I clarify?
Sure.
My understanding right now is that the policies are different in every school right now, and they're implemented very differently. And so maybe you want to refer it to rules if you wish, but right now I think it's left to the discretion of the schools. And I've just had several parents over the last year being very, very concerned, particularly at middle grades, around the use of cell phones and inconsistencies and whether or not it's distracting from the learning process, and really something that could actually help teachers as well, because it can be really challenging.
Superintendent, did you want to comment?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, in my opinion, we don't have a clear set policy for cell phones. And I think what has happened in absence of that is schools have adopted their own. Of late, it's been is you trade the cell phone for a Chromebook. So in some schools, like, I don't know if Mr. Mazza wants to speak to it, but in Winter Hill, that was a policy that they adopted and found it to be pretty successful. There is obviously a logistics to that, of having to collect the cell phones, return the cell phones, but I think in general, the cell phones can be an incredible distraction to our young people in school and out of school. So I think that's something I would like to take back to rules to have a discussion. We have looked at other districts, and most districts don't have set policies with this. They function similar to us. So if we want to be a leader in this area, I'm all for it. So I think we can take that back to rules and start having some conversation.
Yes. Ms. Patel.
Just a quick follow-up. In the context of the experience we've had with homework policy, I think that a cell phone use policy would really benefit from input from staff. And so I don't know what the plans are for these focus groups, whether or not they can only be homework, whether or not that could be something else considered. I'm just going to put it out there and let you guys make the decision about what you've negotiated.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. So it's a good point. I think we need to probably stick with the homework being the homework. But I do think the value of rules is to do some research around this and at least look at what is well thought out plans or policies that may exist in some surrounding districts that we could look toward, and also get some legal advice from our counsel on it.
Mr. Mazzo, did you want to contribute?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. So one of the main reasons we created our own policy is because we found that kids weren't attending, they were on their phones, they were testing each other, they weren't learning. So what we did is, if you remember when we had the paper AMCAS test, used to have a bunch of bins that we would put the tests in, pass them out to classes. We used those bins, and we had a cart, and the bins would be in every 5th through 8th grade classroom every morning. The kids would come in, they'd hand in turn their cell phones off, they'd hand them in, they'd get their Chromebook, we would collect them and bring them to the office and keep them in the office for the day. And then at the end of the day, we had a process where we would bring them back to the kids. It took a while, and it's a culture shift when you do those kind of things, but we found that when we implemented it, it cut down on distractions. It cut down on kids texting their parents if they were in trouble. It cut down on them texting their friends, sending pictures, all those things, so they were more attentive in class. So I agree. I think we need something to make sure that all students are attending when they're in school.
Thank you for raising that question. Are there any other items from board members? We have condolences. I'm first going to ask Superintendent Skipper to contribute one more that was not included on your list.
Over the summer, suddenly we lost a student that would have been a senior at Somerville High School, Tony Samayoa. He was an East Somerville student, followed by the high school, and from all accounts, just a wonderful young man that people really appreciated, had a great sense of humor, and was just very kind. And we had his friends and had created a memorial that was over on the basketball court at East Somerville with his sister and some of his friends. We were able to, and a couple of guidance counselors from the high school, we were able to relocate that memorial away from the basketball court because the students will be back on Wednesday, and it is now located on the little island that's right near, in between where East Somerville and the bus pulls in. So I did not want to let the time go by without saying that we are a worse district for not having this young man be a part of it. I went to the funeral mass, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people there. Both young people his age as well as older people. And I think that's a testimony to who he was and what he meant to the community. So I'd like to add him to our condolences.
Thank you. I would like to just add that this is an age group that I'm very familiar with, and he was widely respected and loved. So thank you for adding that. Dr. Ackman?
The Somerville School Committee would like to extend its deepest condolences to the families of Dean Lamberkus, former SPS Director of Music, Florence Sotiris, retired SHS teacher and guidance counselor, also the aunt of Sharon Sotiris, Kennedy School teacher, Bonnie Cargan, mother of Reed Cargan, teacher at East Somerville Community School, James Sinan, husband of Barbara Sinan, retired secretary, and Amanda Foley, daughter of Laura Foley, health careers teacher.
We are adjourned.